everybody, Facebook community. This is the Friday wrap-up. I'm Greg Campbell. Well, I'm Greg. Campbell is my last name. This is Vito. We have two special guests today. Oh,
Robert Brock Frost
speaking already, and
Marcus Noel.
Oh shit!
Oh
man,
my
this
God!
Is
Power panel.
We're on power panel.
Panel.
PP. Hashtag PP. So
that's what we need. Another hashtag.
PP. I don't know. Here we go. So everybody knows our show it's us speaking about real estate, mortgages. We'll get into obviously a ton of other stuff as we go along. You can message us your questions. Ask us any questions. We will respond the best that we can. We had a question last week about investments, and immediately I said, well, hey, I'm going to call my investment power panel.
Hashtag PP.
Hashtag PP. Robert Brock Frost, Marcus Noel, both licensed realtors as well at RE/MAX Core. And investment leaders, we'll call them investment leaders. I would say that anyway.
Well,
From what I know from you, you've been doing this a long time. So let's just start with the obvious question. What got you into investing?
Okay, good question. Marcus, you first or me first?
Go ahead.
I guess so. Investing for me. Should I look at you? Or
They can look everywhere. I mean, they're here, there.
So investing to me is all about lifestyle. So when you're an entrepreneur at heart. So for me, it's creating my own rules, creating my own schedule, creating my own life. It provides the freedom to do what I want to do when I want to do it. I'm not bound by any schedules. And investment aside from that, in real estate is quite frankly, it's a hustle. So it's constantly changing. The rules are constantly changing. The game is changing, and it makes you think outside the box. So it really stimulates the brain, and again, it provides that lifestyle that I really want. So I'm not sure if Marcus has the same kind of. But
similar to that as well, building long-term wealth as opposed to working a job and hourly, that sort of thing. It's hard to save up. So I find through real estate, you can plan for the long term. A lot of different benefits. As opposed to other investing strategies or other investing channels, I guess. So I just got into real estate, and
so far so good.
And so were you guys? And you started as investors before you got licensed?
Well, I bought my first property in 2006, I think, and then I realized that I'm like, oh, this is pretty sweet. You're getting. It was a rental property, pretty basic. I had no idea what I was doing. Borrowed everything. I had no money. And you realize you're building equity, and I was earning maybe $400 a month net cash flow just from I could do this again. And then I said, wait a second, why don't I expand my knowledge in real estate, so get licensed, and now B, I get paid to buy my own investment properties because I represent myself as an agent.
Right.
So I started as an investor first, and then it led me to get licensed just to have more of that credibility as an investor.
Well, makes sense. And you just got your mortgage license as well, or
No. I mean, the paperwork is in process. So yes, I will be becoming what I like to call a double agent, which is a licensed realtor and a licensed mortgage agent. So I'm waiting on the paperwork as we speak for that, and then.
So will you be just doing your own financing, or will you kind of?
I mean, I'll probably set myself up with a couple mortgages. Yeah.
Is that a conflict of interest?
It's not. RICO, which is a licensed body for real estate agent, they have no discrepancies, and so does FSCO. Which is the Financial Service Commission of Ontario. I was surprised. I said, I started looking into it, and I called both of them. They're like, no, we don't care. And I got that both in writing from both of them, because in case they came back and changed their mind, but no. So I did my exam on February 15th, passed it, got the results already, filed the paperwork yesterday, and I'm waiting to hear back.
So you could have an open house on Sunday and pre-approve them on the spot?
I got it. And I'm a private, so I'm working on one deal. I'll jump ahead, but I'm working on one of my listings where I'm bringing the buyer, and I can represent them on the mortgage, and it would be a private lender. So I would be a listing agent, the buyer agent, the mortgage agent, and a private lender on the same deal.
Nothing going on here.
That's all the up and up, man. So
Talk about an investor, eh?
Anyways, Marcus.
What's up, man?
I get excited when I talk real estate.
I can tell. We're all excited.
We talk about travel after too?
Yeah, of course. We're all going to start sweating pretty soon, I think. This is good.
Yeah, so I got into real estate investing as well about 10 years ago. First place that I bought for myself just to live in was a triplex. So I did a joint venture basically with a couple of my siblings. lived there basically for 5 years and managed it. They didn't live there, so I took care of the property management, everything like that with the other tenants. And then from there, now we've sold that place. And from there, I've just been on my own. Rental properties, flips, sometimes with partners, sometimes on my own. Private financing, traditional financing. So a little bit of experience with everything.
So how many properties, okay, I'm just trying to think of how to word it. So how many properties have you bought and sold, and how many properties do you still, do you have at this time that you maintain?
I have 32 doors, which is, doors is the same word as a unit. So a duplex would be 2 doors or 2 units. So I have 32 units at the moment, which is a variety of residential, mixed use, commercial, student housing, stuff like that. Marcus?
I have 12 doors right now, and working on some for this year to get into basically bigger things right now, mainly duplexes, triplexes, condos, terrace homes, and now looking to get into 6 or 10 units.
Good.
Crazy, man. And you, sorry, man. And you said you've done some flips though in the past.
Yes.
So how many of those have you done?
I've done 2 this year.
Oh wow.
One is actually
one and a half.
One is 1.5. One is actually for sale right now.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, so maybe we can get the address of that one.
Yeah.
MLS number.
Yeah.
Need a buyer.
Yeah.
Hashtag buy my flip.
So yeah.
Okay, cool. You were gonna.
Yeah, no. So my question to you is, you became a real estate agent this year. So now, obviously looking for financing as a less than 2-month realtor. What's the plan of attack there? Because that's gonna be challenging. I mean, you're gonna send me your application, and I'm gonna say
nope.
There you go. So you're gonna know alternative options. There.
Yeah.
Good. Nice.
I did think about that in advance, but I got to a point anyways, even when I was in a salaried position. I was with the bank for 10 years. So even with a salaried position, once you get to a certain amount of doors or properties anyways, you hit a bit of a brick wall, and you have to look into alternative financing regardless.
There's a, what was your cap? Every lender has a different number, 6, 7, 8, 10. I'm just curious, at what point did you really start to see that, restriction?
6 addresses basically.
Yeah, that's when you start to say, to see some barriers.
Yeah, exactly. So whether I'm salaried or self-employed or whatever the case, it's going to be a challenge to get financing anyways through the traditional means. So that's why I use private financing. And
so that's another. I mean, so big interest rates. Oh no, you're going way past your 3% rate. I know that scares a lot of people, right? I think the majority of people can't even comprehend a rate. I don't want to say even, but higher than 5%, right?
Yeah. Let me touch base on that for a sec. So it's a good point that you raise, and the biggest obstacle any investor is going to have is access to financing. Everyone is going to hit that wall, and I'm there. I've been there for a couple of years. So you have to go basically private financing, which is basically the only option at that point. And you were talking about higher rates. So I, for example, have several second mortgages or private loans at this time, range between 9 and 12%. And at the end of the day, as long as the numbers make sense, the deal can still be done, right?
It's a business, right?
Exactly. So if you look at all the numbers, you get your 75% loan to value from the bank at this rate. You get your private second mortgage vendor take back at 12%. And if say it's a rental property, if it's still cash flows and the numbers still work, then absolutely, why wouldn't you do it? You really have no other options.
So for the average person that doesn't know what a private lender is.
So a private lender is just an individual who has savings, who wants to invest into the mortgage market. Not a bank, not a trust company, not a credit union, just an individual who wants to invest. So I'm also a private lender as well, but I also have private funds that I've borrowed at these high rates because the numbers still make sense as an investment.
So instead of going and putting their money in mutual funds at the bank, they're looking at alternative options.
Yeah.
They look at your deal.
One thing as well to look at with the higher interest rates is the timeline too. You might not want to do it if that's your strategy for the next 5 years, but if it's going to be short term, like a flip, whether your interest rate is 9% or 3% over 4 months, it's giving you a difference of less than $10,000, and that financing cost is, in the grand scheme of things, compared to the rentals and everything, isn't going to be that significant.
Right.
And obviously you want to get the best rate possible, but if it's the difference between letting a deal pass or doing a deal and paying the higher rate, it's better to pay the rate, in my opinion. Also, for longer term, you can get private financing or B-side financing, that sort of thing. Once you get the property up to par, and depending on your situation, obviously different situations, but then you can look at refinancing through more traditional means, more affordable rates. So
you're
sometimes,
a B lender.
yeah, you're from a private to a B to an A
Right.
over
Right.
whatever the time frame is.
Right.
Another thing to consider too is bringing in a partner too, which could help.
A co-borrower.
Do you,
Yeah,
do you guys find that, on that note, like, have you, bringing in a partner, so would you generally bring in, like, just a partner and that's it, or do you guys work as in corporations as well? Like, do you have something set up with someone else that you've incorporated to do bigger business, or is it just like, this guy, let's go in on this deal together kind of thing, and you're all on title?
I have a corporation for mine that I do my own
Okay.
from, but in terms of the partnership, it's still 50-50, so I could put mine through my corp,
Uh-huh.
and whoever I'm partnering with can still
Okay.
finance individually.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a corporation. Is there a question?
We have a question, yeah. It's from Mark Grenada, another realtor here in the city. He says, this is actually a question for you, Vito. He says, in a mortgage mixed with a bank and a private lender, would the bank need to approve of the terms and conditions of the private lender?
Banks obviously will have a restriction where they'll allow a second in behind their mortgage. Oftentimes they do. To be honest, that's fancy lawyer work where the bank in first position doesn't even know there's a private in second, right? I mean, Robert, you could probably touch on that too.
Yeah, so basically you understand in the transaction, a lawyer represents the buyer, or the seller, but also the lender in the transaction. So when the mortgage documents are sent to the lawyer in this big form, one of the clause that says is that the lawyer has to advise the lender, the first lender, if there is any secondary financing at that time. So if the lawyer knew that a vendor take-back or a second mortgage was going to be installed at the same time, they could not do it and the deal would probably die.
Right.
But most lenders will allow a second mortgage up to 90% of the loan to value. So for example, $100,000 purchase, you get 75% from the bank. They'll allow a second mortgage of $15,000, which is 15% loan to value, which would remain the 10% for the down payment. There are some lenders, Magenta allows second financing up to 100% of the value, but it really is up to the lender disclosure, but the deal will, the lawyer cannot pull a fast one in that
Right.
regard.
And at the end of the day, I mean, a bank in first position, what that means is they have first right to the property. So they're not overly concerned.
Not normally.
They're not as concerned as that second, because at the end of the day, if the client declares bankruptcy and money's getting distributed to the debts, that bank in first position is getting paid first before the second, and that's just fact.
Normally, they just want to know if there's a second because it changes the GDS and TDS
Right.
ratios. You're right that they're going to get their security in a proposal or
Yeah.
bankruptcy, but they're more or less
Yeah.
if they have another second mortgage at 12%, that might throw their numbers up and not make them able to afford the first.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Good question.
I had an interesting scenario a couple years ago where I had a power sale and there was two lenders, and the second lender got the power of sale. The first was pushing for it, but it was already done and signed, I guess. So the second was the people that I was dealing with, right? So they were out of Toronto, and I was trying to tell them that, well, the property's worth this much, and they're like, no, we know the market. It's worth this much, and I'm like, well, it's not, but let's try it as long as you agree to reduce. So I had it for I think 3 months. We reduced a little bit, and then I was struggling to get the second lender to reduce to sell it, and they were like, if we don't sell at this price, we don't get our money. And I was like, well, the first lender's knocking on your door. I go, they're coming in, and once they swoop in, you're getting zero, right? And is that something you guys have heard of before? Like, and that's what happened. They lost it. The first lender came in. I actually lost the listing too. And then the first lender came in and listed at a price less than what I originally wanted to list, and they got their money out of it.
But so
right away.
either lender can initiate the power of sale process. So it
just so happened that the second did it first, so they trumped the first one obviously, and they had to wait until it didn't sell. But they came in and
did they try to sell?
Did
you list it?
Yeah, we listed it for 3 months, but it was too high and it wouldn't sell.
Wow.
But what I'm saying is, I guess somewhere through the lawyers, the first lender came in and hijacked it.
I'm not sure how that would work legally. I've never actually had that.
And I just brought it up because I was
I've never
just
had that.
thinking about it because it was an interesting situation.
Normally, what it would do in a power, when there's two lenders in a power sale, in a pragmatic scenario, the first lender would approach the second lender in second position and say, "Do you want to buy me out?" and that would solidify the second lender's position, because the second lender, chances are there's going to be a shortfall, they're going to lose in the power. So that's what I've seen that a couple times, and that's what I would do if I had a
That
couple
makes
second
sense.
mortgages, and I would do that, offer to buy out the first, and then kind of hold it, and you can wait it out. But I've never seen that kind of
So maybe then maybe that had happened.
Yeah,
Because
I'm
at
not
one
sure.
point the lawyers were talking, and then I was just totally out of the picture. And then they said they're coming in and doing it. So and I don't think it. Actually, I guess they must have waited till it expired. But then like legally, I guess somehow it happened. So they were out of the picture.
I'm not sure they're legally obligated to sell it at market value anyways, whether it's the first or second
Yeah.
lender. So
Well, that's the
I
thing.
don't think
So
that
it
would
was
change
just-
anything. So, but I don't know.
Anyways,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
There's always the one off, for sure.
I mean, that's why I love the game. There's always something, right?
We have a special guest who'd like to answer
Oh.
that question.
The second mortgage holder can call the mortgage due, even if they're in second position, the second mortgage holder can control that property.
yeah.
So if you have both due and the second mortgage is defaulting, they're still making their first mortgage payments, or
Yep.
vice versa.
Yep.
Second mortgage holder can still call the mortgage due and control that transaction, and they can then negotiate with the first mortgage holder if they want to take the property over or if they want to list in that respect. So they can control that and kind of put the boots to the first mortgage holder.
It's
Once
yeah,
that-
it's,
might happen.
but I see it. Like the
That's
second one, they
yeah.
had it, but I'm just saying, like it just seemed to be such an aggressive behavior from the comments I was getting from the second lender. It was crazy. Like
Well,
he's like they
Was it a
wanted.
private lender, like the second?
No, they were both like B lenders. I don't remember the companies, but anyways,
There's
whatever.
more risk on a second mortgage holder, and they're going to want to.
They're gonna want it, and they wanted their money.
Possible,
Yeah.
because the likelihood if the first mortgage holder controls that transaction,
Then they're
the
getting
likelihood
nothing.
that the second is going to get all of their
Right.
money out is going to be slim.
Exactly. All right.
So,
Yeah, good question.
Yeah,
So what else?
Thanks, Dave.
Any we have any other questions coming up there? No.
Well,
Facebook, the Facebook community. What's
You wanna-
going on?
I want to talk
I have a
about.
topic.
Let's go.
You know, Frost Noel here, focusing on investment. What do we got here?
Hot areas in the city.
Yeah.
That's a question.
Well, so my question
Maybe your
here
thing.
for you guys, focusing on investment
Yeah.
properties, and Robert, you with 30, Marcus, you with 12, and you were looking to expand that. My
30 doors.
30 doors, sorry. My biggest thing on the financing side is you guys obviously could be financing disasters like we talked to getting privates and private seconds, but liquidity, you know, I had a scenario where a client had 27 doors, probably grossing about $180,000 a year in gross rent. He was going through a separation, whatever. All he needed was $150,000. He's got millions in equity, cash flowing well over what he needed. But when it came down to getting some financing to pay out his ex to get this little cottage, there was literally no answers. He was tapped out. He had no cash. He had mortgages with institutions like Desjardins that had blankets over multiple properties, right? And these, when I say by blanket, a client will have multiple properties and will assign one mortgage on all of those properties. And he was restricted. He couldn't break these mortgages. So he built these properties. They had tremendous amount of value and equity in them, but he couldn't break them. He couldn't refinance them, and he couldn't pay out his ex. And he was basically stuck working on this for a year. And yeah, so liquidity is king when I saw this deal.
I've been there. I am there.
And-
Go ahead.
yeah, and rental properties as well, like especially the first few years or however long, don't always generate tons of like income today.
Right.
I think of it more as a long-term type strategy for like building wealth as opposed to an income right now. That's why I mix in other things like flips and stuff like that, where like even for a flip, I'd be better off holding the property, renting it out, and selling it 25 years, from now. You're gonna make a lot more money, but you don't have anything today. So that's why I do a little bit of both rentals and flips.
Right.
So in terms of liquidity for rental properties, it can be tough, or income, I should say, from rental properties can be tough. Even when you look at cash flow and stuff like that, it could look a lot better on paper than it actually is because you always have incidentals. So I think of the cash flow more as a safety net to keep in for the property.
Right.
But one thing you can consider if you're looking for higher cash flow on properties is going outside of the city where the property values are lower. It doesn't appreciate as quickly, but the cap rates and cash flow are a lot better. So you kind of trade off in the city basically for long-term and appreciation
Right.
and stability, or you can go outside of the city.
Smaller markets.
And
Smaller
if you need
markets
cash
are-
now,
Yeah,
gotta set
you know what I mean?
now.
Like they generate better monthly income, but in 10 years from down the road, your house might be worth the same as it is.
Right now,
Yeah.
we have a question.
Yeah, so it's actually a two-part question. So it's from Jenny Fitz. What's up, Jenny?
Jenny.
Great video. It says, as I work for a bank, I understand TDS at 40% and a loan to value of 80%. However, a lot of people may not understand that. Perhaps you can explain that to viewers. The second part of that is, if you could also explain the options and advantages to purchasing a cottage as a second mortgage, either for a flip or residence, key areas or places closer to Ottawa people could look. I think for this more, maybe explain how TDS works and how it affects, like how it's different from a first-time home buyer to an investor, like how they actually analyze those
Sure.
ratios.
So are you
Great question, Jenny.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
sorry.
you know, for the way a bank looks at any mortgage application, what's going on?
Just go ahead.
Another question?
So TDS, it's a fancy acronym for total, which means total debt servicing ratio, and basically it's a calculation that the bank looks at to determine a client's affordability. Okay, so basically your expenses can't exceed a certain percentage of your income, and in simple terms, it's as black as white as that. If you go to the bank and apply for a mortgage, whether you're a first-time home buyer, an investor, obviously there's going to be different pockets, requirements that the bank's going to have for you, but at the end of the day, if your expenses exceed a certain percentage of your income, aka 40%, 42%, 44%,
Keep going.
then 50% with B lenders, the bank just will say no to you. So your typical A lender, they're looking at 42%. They don't want your total expenses, so that's your car loan, that's your OSAP loan, that's your credit card balances, that's your co-sign on your girlfriend's car, that's your
Is
mortgage.
that personal experience?
Remember,
Obviously.
divorce is like getting a car loan, Matt said last week.
I mean, you get an obligation, yeah. So a car loan's an obligation. So anyways, so when you go to your bank, they're looking at 44% max, They ideally want 42%. And what that means is your monthly expenses from all those debts added up, in addition to the new debt, the new mortgage you're looking for, it can't exceed 44% of your income. And that's where you hit that wall, as we were saying. When you start hitting more doors, you're going to hit that wall where naturally, on paper, it looks like your debts are a lot higher, but really, banks aren't accepting rental income as much. They accept a portion of your rental income, usually only 50 to 80%. Well, obviously, that's not a true, the truth,
Yeah.
right? So that's where you're looking for your B lender, who will extend to 48%, to 50%, and then even then, if the deal still makes sense, these banks are going to have their policies. You can't exceed that TDS. And then that's where you go to your private financing.
Yeah, just a couple of clarifications. So first of all, that's based on gross income, not net income. So
Correct.
you're making $10,000 a month, say for example, gross income. The bank will at 42%, they'll allow $4,200 gross to go towards your TDS. And just a clarification on TDS too, is it's not all expenses, it's all debt. So it usually includes it includes the principal and the interest of the property you're buying, the property taxes and heating, car loans, girlfriends, co-signing loans, but it doesn't include some expenses like
Your cell
car
phone bill.
insurance, cell phone,
Yeah.
house insurance, RSP contributions. So it's not all expenses, it's mostly all debts that are in a loan format. But again, what you said is basically right. It's based on the bank wants to know if you can afford the mortgage, plain and simple,
Right.
and that's what they use that. Another question.
Yeah,
Well,
so there was a
two
second part to that. It was
Oh.
basically what are the advantages of buying a cottage as a second property, and what areas just outside of Ottawa are kind of hot pockets right now?
No advantages. Lifestyle.
I'll touch base on the cottage. I personally have never bought a cottage, so I can't speak specifically about that. The way I do look at cottages is a little bit of a higher risk. It's a lot more complicated to get financing for a cottage because banks do not want to be stuck with that. They don't move like houses downtown, the market or Barhaven or whatever. So you're looking at probably 65-70% loan to value, if that. And then there can also be some restrictions on building. There's a lot of restrictive covenants on building maximums and easements on people having right of ways to you know, so there's a lot of
Four
there's legal,
season access.
yeah, there's
there's
legal,
yeah.
but in terms of just pure enjoyment,
Well, that's the thing.
I would buy a cottage.
A
as
cottage
enjoyment,
is-
not as an
A
investment.
cottage is for recreation. It's not really an
the
investment.
advantages are basically for enjoyment and as
Yeah.
well as the potential of
Long-term.
short-term rentals, like
Yeah.
vacation type rentals, where you can obviously charge a premium.
Yeah.
But
That's more to cut your expenses,
that's
right?
more to
Yeah.
ideally offset some of your expenses, so
Exactly.
you can enjoy the cottage yourself and supplement the income a little bit, or at least offset the expenses, as opposed to having it rented 52 weeks a year and making
Great
turning it
location
into
for
a-
that is
yeah.
Thousand Islands. Rent all the time.
There you go.
Every summer.
Another question.
Yeah.
What are the hot areas in the city?
Yeah, so, well, someone asked, what about Cornwall and Brockville? So what kind of areas just outside the city are then kind of the next hot pockets?
So,
Do you know,
so
do you know anything about Cornwall?
Well, I'm from Cornwall, so I own quite a few properties in Cornwall, and it's based. Marcus touched base on this earlier, where you're looking at if you're looking at cash flow, outside of the areas are better because the rental to price ratio is a lot better than in the city. Rents are relatively high compared to Ottawa, but the prices are substantially less. So if you're looking at a pure ratio basis, it's much better as an investment for cash flow purposes. As Marcus said, the appreciation is not as big in those areas, but that's why you need to diversify your portfolio. Cash flow, if you're looking for cash flow, then buy properties that cash flow. If you're looking for equity buildup or flip market, then yeah, look in those markets. So you really need to diversify, but those areas for those types of property I think are great, and I strongly promote them.
Same on the
Yeah.
Gatineau side too. I find
Yeah.
cash flow great, but zero market appreciation.
I mean, it's not zero, it's slow and steady. Like, my properties in Cornwall, you're looking at 3%, they're just slow and steady, but I'm keeping that cash flow. It's a
Right.
long-term wealth game, those properties. But when I'm short on cash, like your liquidity question is like, that's where you need to look at starting
Yeah.
doing flips where you can, increase your coffers, for example.
And just to touch on that long-term game, but what if you keep refinancing these properties? Then you're taking away from all that time and effort that it took to pay down the mortgages, to build that equity, to one day maybe have zero debt on the property and actually, net.
Well, not necessarily.
But you're also multiplying
Yeah, exactly,
properties,
yeah.
right? So if you own
Okay.
one property straight up that's worth 250 grand and you don't have a mortgage on it, that's great. But you're better off owning 20 properties and being mortgaged 80% of you still have more.
It's a volume
Well,
game.
think about
Yeah.
this. Say you have a 250 mortgage-free house. You can sell it, and then you can leverage that at 50,000 times 5, so 20% down on 5 $250,000 house. Now you have 1.25 million in assets versus 250.
Yeah.
Your net worth has not changed; it's still 250. You're 250 mortgage-free over here, but now you're 250 with 50,000 equity times 5.
Right.
Your assets have multiplied 5 times, and then it's a long-term game.
Okay.
Right?
So I mean, if you have 10 properties with only 50 grand equity in each, you're still better off having that than owning one flat out for 220.
That's the
Well,
power
you're-
of leverage.
You know?
Leverage is the key word in there. Yeah.
Yeah, you like that word.
I love leverage. It's risky, but that's how you expand, right?
Yeah.
We have to refinance and
Right.
reborrow and.
And another thing, again, that people don't, I find, touch on enough is like people's timeline too, right? Like, depending on when you need the money, how long you're planning on holding the property, everything like that. Those are all things to consider too, when the type of property or how much you want to refinance, that sort of deal.
So we have a question regarding cap rates. So Mark Renee was saying that he has clients that are kind of gravitating towards the Gatineau side, and he's wondering what the difference, or I guess generally speaking, what cap rates look like Gatineau versus Ottawa.
I personally don't go into Gatineau mostly because I'm not licensed there, so I don't have all the access to all the data. I would imagine the cap rates are slightly higher than here, probably 5 or 6%, but that would be just a pure guess. I honestly don't have an answer.
Yeah,
I could make something up, but I just don't have the
Yeah,
answer.
I've never bought, I don't buy anything in Quebec, but one thing with cap rates as well is it is kind of difficult to compare apples to apples because people calculate them different and add different expenses. When you see a cap rate on a listing, typically it's not a true cap rate. It doesn't include like management fees,
Yep,
vacancies, bad debts, everything like that. It's usually just the very basics. So you have to, a cap rate is a good starting point to look at just for a quick analysis, but you have to dig a lot deeper into it.
I agree. Most people always like, what's a cap rate? What's a cap rate? That's like such a small thing on what to focus on. People are so focused on the cap rates, and it's just it's a flash in the pan of what's really important. And just for the viewers out there, cap rate is basically it's a relationship between the purchase or value of a property and the net operating income. So all the gross rental income minus all your expenses, that's the relationship. So it produces a percentage. So investors are looking at what is their return on purchase price in terms of net income.
So to loop that back to the Cornwall Brockville, I mean, it's essentially the same thing. The cap rate, in theory, is a little bit better on that Gatineau side, the Hull side, because the property values are much less.
Exactly.
But the rent is still about the same because it's literally 5 minutes from downtown still. So
Exactly.
Yeah, like
But
I don't
then,
have the exact stats on
right.
I don't have
cap rates on this, and
I apologize for the question. Hold on.
but they will it's definitely be higher outside of the city.
All I know is that Quebec it has a whole different playbook for everything in terms of real estate, finance, rules, and laws. And I've heard some nightmares, but there's nightmares in any page you turn. There's going to be a nightmare. But there's that.
Every page. Every single page.
There's going to be that X, right? That asterisk, right?
Tonight.
Yeah, tonight.
But what's the deal with the whole tenancy agreements, right? The residential agreements in in Quebec versus Ontario. Everybody says they're in favor on the Quebec side. You just can't kick people out at all.
I mean, I could talk for 17 days about tenancy agreements, but
That's one of the reasons why I don't like Quebec, is just because it's a whole other game, and I'm just not as
like Quebec for real estate investing. Don't be afraid.
But in terms of tenants in Ontario, there is definitely security for the tenants.
Yeah.
But for an active landlord or a prudent landlord, people say that you can't kick tenants out, this, that. You can. You just have to go through the right steps. And it doesn't take 5 or 6 months like people say. That's when people allow their tenants to get 2 or 3 months behind on rent before they take action, because it does take roughly about 2 months.
So when should you take action?
So I'll tell you, I have a personal policy in all my leases that says, well, rent's due on the 1st. I say, and I meet with them, if I don't receive the rent by the 5th, I am going to serve you this notice. Don't be alarmed. Doesn't mean you have to leave. What it does is it starts the clock. If you pay me during that 14-day period, the notice is void. I'm just following my personal protocol.
Yeah.
But you have to start that clock, because evicting a tenant for non-payment or some other issues, it's a time thing. You have to go through the motion. So start that motion
It's a good strategy.
as soon as possible.
So how do you?
But most lenders are
If a landlord says that they've lost 6 months rent, or their tenant stayed for 6 months, it's because they didn't start the process quick enough.
100%.
Now you can lose more. It takes about 2 months to get them out, and then you might lose another month because you might not want to show the property while they're in there. It's not going to be in a good state. So you could lose. It could be a few months, but ideally, even if it's say 3 months, and then you have the last month's rent deposit already. So in terms of actually lost income, like the maximum you should be looking at, worst case scenario should be a couple of months.
I 100% agree with that. I've never lost more than that.
And I guess you learn every time, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, I tell my investors is, look, if you think you're going to get into real estate and never have a tenant issue, you're mistaken. Walk out the door. Don't ever buy a property. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. It's 100% guaranteed. And some of my best tenants are the worst on paper, and vice versa.
Right.
You do your due diligence, but you're never going to get it 100% right, and you're going to have issues, and you're going to go to the tenant board. It's guaranteed. It's inevitable.
I think what scares people is the tenant board. Like, where do you start, right? Google?
I mean, I've been there many times. You learn the law as you go, and it's part of, if you want to be a real estate investor, that comes with the territory. It's not, there are pros and cons to every job.
And do you guys manage your properties, or you have somebody do it for you?
I have
a manager. Yeah.
I manage my own.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the other thing, is you can either, like we were talking about bad tenants, that sort of, I guess bad tenants. You can either deal with it yourself, or if you want to be an investor but you don't want to be hands-on and deal with the tenants, you can hire property management companies. Right. But of course, then you can't expect the same return, because you're basically subcontracting out the work for it, right? So it's a bit of a trade-off. If you're, if you're okay with it,
you have to be involved. I hear all the time is like, I just want to buy a rental and just forget about it. I don't want to hear about it. That's like an investor saying, I'm going to put money in the stock market and just never look at it and never care.
Yeah.
Like, that's such a bad strategy. I am in constant contact with my property manager daily, all day long, every day, because I care about my properties. I don't have to deal with the day-to-day complaints and the tenants and the issues, but I want to know what's going on in my investments. So having that mentality, you don't want to ever hear from a tenant or know what's going on. Terrible strategy.
So that's actually interesting. Does your
Terrible.
property manager, does he have a schedule? She has a schedule. She pops in, visits. What's that whole schedule like?
Well, she doesn't go and visit them just randomly, but
Right.
she has rent collection pickup. She's in constant communication. We have a process in place for any repairs have to be sent to this address, and we have a system in place.
But you have a system for you don't pay on the 1st, on the 5th you're gonna get this notice.
Correct.
What you care about your properties.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it might look good on the outside, but what about what's going on the inside? Like, are they taking care of it? Do they have sheep in the house? You know, right? Like, I read a disaster
I hope they do.
in Kingston.
Have you had
There's an article. I can share you the article in Kingston. This house had livestock in the house. They had sheep. They had bunnies. There was feces everywhere. The guy, like this, innocent landlord was
Shepherd.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
I want to tell you, I'll tell you a real story. And Jacinda, if you're watching, this is for you. So I had a tenant. I had only 2 semis. I lived in one and she lived in the other. And she texted me. She's like, I bought one of those pot-bellied pigs. Like little cute little. They're like $5,000. And I'm like, oh my god. And I see her pull up, and this pig man comes out of the car. And the thing's running a house, and it's just like hiding. I'm like, Jacinda, you bought an actual farm, full-grown pig. I'm like, where'd you get it? Kijiji? I'm gonna give you a lot, Jacinda. You have to tag this. $25 she paid. I said, pot-bellied pigs are like $5,000. I said, you got ripped off by some farmer for $25. Just gave you a full. And then
this is a mini pig. I swear, it's just really big.
Huge, man. So the next day she brought it back, and that was $25. And a good experience. You're done. I've never had a sheep, but back to your you don't know what's going on. So part of the Residential Tenancy Act requires you that you allow the tenants to reasonably enjoy their tenancy there. They pay there, they have the rights to live without landlords knocking on the door every day and saying you have sheep here.
Right.
But in the lease agreement, you can, I love the sheep thing. In the lease agreement, you can set pre-inspection dates for certain reasons.
Okay.
So, and if the tenants allow for that, I do that I think every 6 months, for smoke alarms and furnaces, you have to do that. But because you don't know what they're doing in there, and you have to stay on top of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And a lot of landlords don't, and that's one of the issues they find themselves is like, oh my god, I didn't know what they were, like just garbage and filth, and
Exactly.
that's how they end up with people who grow up. They don't pay attention. To
Yeah, they don't pay
tenants.
attention. They don't follow up, and it's like, it must be okay.
It must be okay. They're paying the rental and cash every month. It's a grow up.
They gave me 3 months up front. It was great. Yeah. This is amazing. Wealth of knowledge today. I gotta say, this is like I'm learning. Is everybody else learning?
Too.
Yeah. And I think I forgot to mention at the beginning, we're on 3 feeds right now. Paul Stevenson,
3.
Matthew Gregg, and Greg Campbell.
Right
and these
on.
guys, and with these
How long
two
we-
special guys, we've been on for 35 minutes, almost 40
serious?
minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. Right. Is there?
Wow.
Do we have any other questions? What's the deal?
I have one more
Sure.
question to ask. What me and Steve, you saw him. We bought our first house
Hey,
together
Bo.
when we were like 23.
Nice.
After a year, we I was working in the bank and I had this eureka. I'm doing all these refinances for people, and they're buying property with these refinances. And I'm like, Steve, we could do this, So we refinanced our property, we bought a condo. But when we rented out our property, we had a variety of interest. Okay, we're in the Maryville area. It's a 4-bedroom home. And from students to new immigrants, like it was crazy. And we didn't, so we had a guy from Egypt that wasn't even, was a visitor status still, kid was about to go to school down the street, wanted to pay 2 years upfront cash. And we're like, but...
Yeah. Application approved, my friend.
Yes.
Do you know anyone else looking?
Well, so that's, so what's your screening process?
Okay, so I've got a couple of scenarios. I've never had 2 years up front.
Yeah. Right.
If I had 2 years up front, I don't think, and Marcus brought it back, I don't think I could ever turn down 2 years up front. Because your risks go way out the door with 2 months. You have 2 months.
I don't know why I didn't do it.
But I've had a couple times where a tenant had paid me like 3 months, and I'm like, they're looking a little.
Yeah.
And both times that has come back to bite me in the end.
Really? Why?
Yeah. Because they end up being a bad tenant. You have to go through the eviction process so that, so there's always like this. Say for example, you have a property for March 1st. Now today's February 17th. Most landlords are like, oh my god, if I don't rent sooner, I'm going to be out all of March too, right? So then some guy, you know, some not great applicant comes in on the
Shows up with
22nd,
boxes
shows
of
up the cash,
instructions.
and you're having that, you're like, oh my god, it's happening again. Should I take the cash? And then they're in there for March. So basically, what you're trying to do is save loss for 1 month, but in
Right.
the end, you're going to backdoor that. You're going to lose it probably 2 or 3 times. So,
Right.
but 2 years, I could never turn that down.
Yeah, I don't know what
No
we
way.
did. I don't know what we were
No
a little
way.
skeptical
To-
overall. You know, new different lifestyles. Are they gonna like what's their?
You took it though, didn't
what's
you?
their? No, we didn't. We ended up renting out to some student. Well, like, it was
Wow.
a quick thing. It was like we had a 48-hour window, and it was like we couldn't do credit checks on them. It was our first thing, the property.
Okay, so
Our
yours was-
parents were involved. Like they were. Because we're these 23-year-old kids,
Yeah, good for you.
they were scared. They're like, you can't accept like what it was going to be 40 grand.
Oh!
It was going to be.
Like I said, application check.
40 grand, vacation.
Approved.
Yeah, exactly.
We should have done it for sure, because our tenants
I'm
after
gonna just
were,
cross your application
They were shit?
instantly.
they were shit. Our tenants after they're
Yeah.
disaster. Oh my god,
Oh my
we
God.
got a dump truck filled with 3 days full.
Oh, I've had
This
that.
massive dump truck. I had to move into the property to clean it because it was disgusting. It was a disaster.
I know.
Well, one thing
But
to touch on that
still
stuff
made a lot of
when
money.
he was talking about like getting people to move in quickly into a vacant property.
Right.
I've learned it's better to leave your property vacant for an extra month or whatever the case,
Yep.
and go with a good tenant.
100%, man.
And like you can have obviously like your application and your screen burst and everything like that, but a lot of it too comes down to like gut feeling a little bit. You
Yeah,
know?
it is.
Like
Right.
I've done it in the past where I've taken someone just quickly to fill a spot, and now I don't. Like if I do showings, even if it's vacant, and 3 or 4 people hand in applications, sometimes I just don't take any.
And that's actually good. Where you might, it's good to have a little bit of a cash flow reserve to have these things. So the novice investor who's just buying their first property is probably strapped. They probably got or borrowed every cent for the down payment and closing costs. They probably can't afford this, 1 month vacancy. So
Yeah.
that's where they're going to panic. When you're panic, you make bad
Yeah.
decisions. So that's you need to when I do a cash flow analysis, I always build in kind of a month's buffer for these exact reasons. Or you
Right.
end up
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Question?
Yeah, so we'll wrap it up in say 5 minutes. Question here is basically the majority of people are looking to buy their first home. So for people that own their first home, what would be your advice on how to get started into investing? So very like preliminary 101, what's the first step? Should they look for the place? Should they talk to a financier? What's the option?
If they already have their own first home.
If they have a first home and they want to get into investing, what's the best next step?
Go. Do you want to go?
Well, I was going to say, ideally, if you're looking at buying your first home and you know you're eventually going to want to get into real estate investing, the best is probably to do it right from the beginning, because that's obviously your first purchase. It's going to be your easiest and probably require the least down. So if you're thinking about kind of buying a condo or whatever the case, and you're saying to yourself, in a couple of years, I'm interested in investing and I'm going to get into it, just not right now, you're better off to do it now and get basically a rental property like a duplex or triplex, owner occupy one of the units and rent out the others. It's easier to manage when you're there. It can be a little bit of a
That's a
All
big
depends
jump, is
there.
it not though? You bought your first property and now you're gonna buy a triplex.
Well, no, I'm saying instead of
Instead of
buying,
buying
yeah,
one
if
property.
you're
Oh,
considering, if you're
I see.
But I
considering
don't
buying,
think they're moving. They're not intending
Right.
on moving. They just want to buy.
Just generally, for people that want to get into investing, that's actually probably the
That's
best
a good point.
answer.
Yeah.
I would say no. The first step is you got to find out what your purchasing capacity is. Can you even afford another property? So you have that talk
Right.
with a mortgage broker, mortgage agent, and they might say instantly, "You can't afford another house." The conversation's over
Right.
instantly.
Right.
There's no point of going looking at houses and then you find you can't afford them.
Yeah.
That's your first step. So that's what I would do. Talk to your mortgage agent or your bank to say, can I buy something? And if so, how much? What type of property in what area? And then go from
and
there.
the question for Matt
Or at
is,
least find out
how
Yeah.
what you
can
need
you
to do.
pre-approve people for, say, income properties? Because it's different, obviously, right?
Right.
Because, say, for your own property, you know what you make, whatever, and then you have a price that you can spend. But income properties are different because, it's going to depend also on the income of the property, right?
Exactly.
So you can't say, okay, you can go out and buy a $300,000 duplex, whatever, because it's going to depend on, does the other side bring in $650 a month,
Right.
or does the other side bring in $1,400 a month?
So that's, the best thing to go back, the pre-approval, your banker, your broker, they're gonna kind of show you the steps on how you could make it happen. First of all, I would recommend it the other way. You buy a property, you live in it for a bit, you build up another down payment to move into another home you like, and you keep your existing property, you convert that to a rental. That cash flow wise, that's your best bet, because you could buy both properties with 5% down. Right? If you want to keep your current property and buy your second, you need 20% down as per your typical bank rules, right?
Yes, but the insurers, CMHC, Genworth, they're going to stop you pretty quickly if you're doing it every year. They're going to
For sure, you're gonna have to, but this
You can't do that as a long
It's to
strategy.
answer no, for sure you can't do it as a long strategy, but as your entry level strategy, get your feet wet with with owning your first rental property. You get to the experience of screening tenants, having tenants, collecting money from them, seeing what their problems are, and then you can see what that's gonna be like. Is this a lifestyle that you're good with? And do you want to ramp it up like obviously you guys have?
We got another question.
We got another question.
So we have a
Two
question
questions.
from VJ Chand. They're asking, what kind of property can you purchase in Ottawa that would provide positive cash flow?
Okay, so cash flow obviously depends on purchase price plus expenses. So your total expenses are going to depend on, first of all, your mortgage amount, and that mortgage amount is going to depend on the size of your down payment. So for example, if you pay cash for a property, I can cash flow anything, right? So it all depends on, so you need to kind of step back and say, well, what is your purchasing capacity? How much cash do you have? And then look at what are your options in that regard, and then go from there.
I guess
But
assuming you're
is-
putting 5 to 20% down, let's say in that range, 5 to 20% down.
What area, like what
You know,
style?
Then you gotta look at
this. This was the question that actually prompted me to get you guys on the show.
So again,
they
it
said-
still depends. So, does this property, do they have cash reserves for any major renovations or repairs? Are they handy? Is this their first time? Are they new to the game? Do they understand the Tenancy Act? These are, like for a brand new person, I would usually get them in a newer, low maintenance, easy to rent area where it's less stress, less risk for them.
So where's
To-
that?
to-
Where would you say that would be?
Well,
in
to be
Ottawa?
very specific,
Barhaven, Canada, Orleans, those are all safe new builds.
Right.
or specifically, I'm going to get some backlash on this one, but I own a property in there, and it's the one property that I've owned that I never have to do anything, pay high condo fees, so it's all taken care of, but the prices are low, it cash flows. Right now it doesn't have a great reputation, but it's come down in price. I think it'll go back up, who knows when. But if you want
Drum
something-
roll.
Where's it?
Jasmine Crescent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to purchase Marcus's listing, please visit.
I don't have a
Where's
listing
that?
in there. No, it's off of Oakley. Literally,
Yeah,
you
it's
can
like
go on
Gloucester.
Realtor.ca right now and find one for like 110,000.
Yeah.
Condo fees are about $510 a month. Your mortgage.
Everything's in on that though, right? That's
Yeah.
heat and hydro.
Heat, hydro, water, everything. So you're gonna have basically $500 a month condo fees. Your mortgage on that, say 110 grand, if you put down 20%, your mortgage is gonna be like 90,000. It's gonna be like $500.
Yeah.
You can rent it out easily for $1,200. Like I rent mine out for a little over $1,200. So it's not huge cash flow, but a couple $100 a month cash flow. You don't have to do anything. It does have, I know it has the reputation. I think it's a fine place to buy, and they do rent easily. I've had the same tenants in there for 3 years now. They've never called me once. They're good tenants, both basically retired government workers.
One
So
point.
if you want specific answer,
Alternatively, I say, find your duplex that you could convert the basement to a secondary dwelling, right? I find that will be a cash flow
Yeah.
thing, right?
It will, but again, then you're looking into, does the buyer have enough cash and time to do that? That's going
Right.
to require a substantial
Yeah.
legal process and cost.
Yeah.
So most investors getting up, they're just scraping enough to get by. They can't
Right.
handle all this other
that's
stuff.
why I was saying, Jasmine, it's not necessarily an ideal situation for everyone, or some people want
Yeah.
bigger properties, but if you're just looking to get into it where it's going to be hands off, it's a condo, so you're not responsible for any of the big maintenance, the windows, the roof, HVAC, anything like that. Very low purchase price.
Well, and the tenants like it because it's all included.
It's all
Everybody's
included.
asking
You-
for that.
you advertise it as
Big
all
time.
inclusive.
At any place.
Yeah, and
So-
and it's going to cash $200 a month cash flow. Like it's going to cash flow almost the same as you would on a duplex, like a perk or duplex or triplex.
We got another
Just to
question.
summarize quickly that question about what is the best for cash flow, it really depends. That's what I just want to say. It depends on a lot of things.
So we have a question from Chris Nash. What's up, Chris?
Chris?
He says, is there a percentage you'd suggest to hold in reserve on any given property? And how would you suggest a novice investor calculate their TDS if methods vary to get a clear picture of where they stand?
So I'll talk
Our
about...
mortgage app.
Well, the TDS, I don't understand. The TDS methods don't vary. They're pretty clear on what all banks use the same, all lenders use the same type of expenses. So TDS will include, again, your principal and your interest on the property you're attempting to purchase, the tax on that property, the heating, and then includes any major debts that you have. Student loans, car loans,
Credit
personal
cards.
loans, credit cards. But it doesn't include, it basically doesn't include a cost that you can stop at a given period. So
Lifestyle.
like a cell phone, you can stop at any given time and you don't owe a balance. Insurance, you can stop and then you don't owe a balance. So That's not included in that. So basically, your TDS, add up all those payments, divide it by your gross monthly income. That's your TDS. And the second question was how much in reserve.
Yeah, how much would you keep in reserve at any given time for a property?
Marcus, I'll let you talk.
Again, it depends on the property too, the age of the property, that sort of thing. So that's kind of a very broad question. It would be
Newer property, less than 10 years old. 2 months, 3 months rental income.
They say 1 month. RAIN Canada, which is the Real Estate Investment Network of Canada, they suggest 1 month's rent. But again, like Marcus said, it really depends on the individual, the type of property, the area. Is it high vacancy?
Right.
You know, something like that.
We got another question.
So we'll make this a last question,
yeah, I
and then
think so.
you guys can wrap it up and give your closing. So, any major differences an investor needs to consider between buying a duplex, triplex versus buying an 8 or 15 unit apartment building?
Absolutely, 100%. Biggest obstacle will be financing. In that most lenders, once you get past 4 doors, you're into the commercial lending zone, which the criteria become, for lack of a better word, a nightmare. There is so much more red tape, the rules change, and then it becomes much more about the property instead of the individual investor. So a duplex, triplex, the bank will base it a lot on your individual credit, your income, your personal history. You get past a fourplex, then they're looking into the property itself. What are the income, what are the full expenses, is there environmental assessment, what is the market rents, market vacancy rents on that property, etc. So it changes right after 4. So for a novice investor, honestly stick below 4 for the time being. Yeah.
But
Marcus,
more
the other-
pain, more gain, right?
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
the multiple unit there. That's where the real.
Yeah, like
that's where the
Marcus
real-
tried to get into 610 plus. That's
yeah,
the way.
That's what you see
yeah.
these Minto. Minto started somewhere, right? And they definitely started expanding beyond 4 units, right?
Yeah,
So,
they're doing all right.
yeah.
So for Marcus and Robert, in closing, where can people get a hold of you if they want more advice on investing? Greg, Matt, maybe if you guys
I
each
was just
give
gonna
us
ask
a
that
Facebook, man.
question.
Add us on Facebook. Send me a message. Let's go for a coffee or a drink, preferably a drink. But I do drink coffee as well. We'll go from there. Just have a chat. I love just meeting clients and just telling me what's your goal, what's your strategy, and we hash out a plan from there.
So on Facebook, it's
Robert Brock Frost or Frost Noel is our page. We have frostnoel.com, robertbrockfrost.com. You have marcusnoelproperties.ca.
NoelProperties.ca.
Something like that. Noel Properties.
Oh, the joke.
But anyway, well, that's
what's
one last guy.
One last question before we go from Michael Bailey. He's asking, what do you think about commercial, residential, mixed-use units?
I have one of those, and I bought it because it was kind of a power sale. Depends on the area, because commercial places are so much, again, depending on the area, are much difficult to lease. So vacancy is a concern. Also, affordability lendability. A lender will, again, in a commercial building, require substantial more down payment. So that's something to consider if someone doesn't have the actual liquid cash to purchase. Taxes are all a lot higher in a commercial zoning, so they're usually 2 times the residential rates in a municipality. So expenses are a consideration. But depending on the area and the kind of the overall plan of the city, it could be a good investment long term for appreciation on a commercial property. That's
The
basic-
complexity of it is probably a lot
Yeah,
harder.
yeah.
Someone looking to get into investing is probably
Yeah.
might be best just to kind of stick with residential at the beginning
To
and
start, yeah.
to start.
And what's going on this Wednesday? You guys got something going on?
Yeah, so it's a little seminar, just about 15 people, but we're going to be filming it, something like this, and it's about the in-depth cash flow analysis. So looking at exactly how to look at a property and determine the net cash flow and then whether it would be a good return on investment.
And are you guys doing it Facebook Live as well?
Yeah, I think
you
we're
should
gonna
do
do
it.
it.
And
We
that's
are.
going to be at the core
Office, yeah.
core office.
Yeah.
We,
So about
uh,
6 to 8 p.m. on the 22nd.
And we'll have
6
some.
to
We'll
8
have
PM,
stuff.
okay, cool.
We'll have some basically subject properties, so we can do kind of specific examples,
Nice.
like in the city versus outside the city, how to analyze them, what we look for, and basically what what.
So if anybody wants to come to the seminar, it's February 22nd, 6 to 8 p.m. at Remax Core, which is 485 Industrial Avenue. I think that's enough for today.
Okay. Wow. Long day. Friday wrap up. See you next week, everyone. Hey.
71 Elgin. Come
Woo!
Yeah.
Referral Mortgages, Greater Ottawa Group, Remax Core, Marcus, Noel.